So just want to start by giving you an opportunity to make your announcement.
Yeah. I'm pleased to announce that today Mayor Kirk Watson and I will be requesting an investigation of the Austin Police Department by the United States Department of Justice. I think it is a significant step forward to be able to have systemic change in our police department here in Austin. And I'm really grateful to Mayor Watson and to Interim Chief Henderson for working with the District Attorney's Office to move forward and make this progress. In addition, the District Attorney's Office will also be announcing that we are dismissing 17 of the protester cases, so that is 17 cases against 17 officers, and we will be moving forward with the prosecution of an additional 4 cases.
Can you describe the 4 cases that you will move forward with?
Well, what I will say about them is that those cases had aggravating factors that make clear that in those cases a just outcome requires continued prosecution and the opportunity for our community to weigh in on the facts of those cases sitting as a jury in our court system.
I appreciate your position around the request for DOJ and your position about the community significance of that, and I do want to get back to that, but at the same time, the decision around the protester cases, I'm sure you can understand, is also going to have a significant impact. Can you just talk about that decision more fully?
Well, I think that decision is the right thing to do. And the reason why is because the responsibility of our office in the District Attorney's Office is to seek just outcomes. During the 2-year investigation into the Austin Police Department and the City of Austin and their conduct during the 2020 protests, it became clear that systemic change is really necessary to ensure that this never happens again in our community. And the best way to achieve that outcome, to achieve systemic change, is through an investigation by the Department of Justice. And so from the perspective of the District Attorney's Office, that is the most just outcome that we can achieve and one that is worth pursuing for the benefit of our community.
What did you learn? What did you uncover? What did the investigation yield that made you shift your approach from the indictment of more than 20 officers to something more holistic?
Yeah. During the 2020 protest, Austin Police Department officers fired deadly weapons over 700 times into crowds of unarmed civilians. As a result, members of our community, people's children, people who came downtown to exercise their First Amendment rights, suffered lasting and permanent injuries. The conduct was incredibly serious and the consequences were serious. And it was also clear that those actions were part of a culture within the Austin Police Department that led to those outcomes. And so it is really important that we take this opportunity to change that culture and to make the kind of systemic change that will ensure this doesn't happen again.
What is the culture as you see it? How would you describe it?
Well, again, I think the facts lay it out pretty plainly. It is a culture where it was permissible to fire a deadly weapon over 700 times into crowds of unarmed people. The victims of these crimes, the people who suffered lasting injuries, were overwhelmingly innocent bystanders. They were guilty only in many instances of standing, of holding signs. The facts alone suggest a culture that is in need of repair. But I think it's also clear that over the course of the last several years, our community has demanded changes within the Austin Police Department. Most recently, they passed by an overwhelming majority a proposal to increase oversight into the Austin Police Department. I also want to acknowledge that since the protest of 2020, the Austin Police Department has made some progress, and I'm really grateful for that progress. I'm particularly grateful to the progress that was made under Chief Chacon. His willingness to engage in moving forward is a big part of why we are here today. And I'm optimistic about the leadership of Interim Chief Henderson. Under her leadership, the Austin Police Department recently made the decision to cease the use of the weapons that were used during the protest that caused so much damage. And so I'm really grateful for the progress that we've made, and it is clear to me that there is still a way to go, and that that the outcome today is going to help us move forward.
These indictments, this series of indictments, though, has really been a defining aspect of your first year in office. I think a lot of people will view this decision as abandoning a campaign promise around police accountability and law enforcement accountability. What is your response to people who may believe that?
We are very proud of the work of our prosecutors to hold accountable law enforcement officers who break the law. We believe that it is incredibly important for our public safety that any time a person breaks the law, regardless of their title or position, that they be held accountable. When our office receives evidence that a law enforcement officer has broken the law, we will move forward with prosecution, and we are. You may be aware that the District Attorney's Office recently tried a case against an officer for the death of Mr. Ramos. That case will continue to go forward, as well as several others in our office. And we will continue to review cases brought to us and continue to move forward with prosecution when that's the appropriate outcome. In this instance, dismissing the 17 cases and moving forward with the 4, we believe is a just outcome that gives us the best chance at systemic change, and that's what we're going to pursue.
With regard to the Ramos case, I know the topic of this conversation is obviously about the decision regarding the protester cases, but I do want to ask, since you're here, are you going to retry Officer Christopher Taylor and the death of Michael Ramos?
Yeah, absolutely. In the court where that trial was held, there have been 3 mistrials this year, and every single one of those cases is going to be retried. This case is no different. What this community deserves is a criminal justice system that treats everyone the same, that treats all criminal conduct equally, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
So there are voices in our community who have said from the very start that the indictments against the officers from the protest cases would be absolutely unable for you to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. What is your response to that, and did that contribute at all to your decision to drop most of them?
Yeah, it did not contribute to our decision. The facts in these cases, as I said, I think are quite clear and quite disturbing. During the protest, officers used deadly weapons against unarmed protesters, many of whom, as I said, were guilty of standing or holding signs. The law is quite clear about when law enforcement may use deadly force, and I think the facts are quite clear that the circumstances under which it was used in the protest were unlawful. These cases, as I mentioned, there are 4 cases that are moving forward to trial, and so there will be an opportunity for the public, for our community, through the jury process to weigh in, and ultimately my opinion about the cases and the opinion of lawyers in the community will not be as important as the opinion of the members of our community. I also want to point out that the indictments in these cases resulted from 3 special grand juries. That is, 3 collections of community members who reviewed the facts and reviewed the evidence and determined that there was evidence of criminal conduct.
With regard to these cases, though, it is my understanding that in some instances, for example, investigators or experts were unable to actually determine which officer fired a certain projectile that maybe hit a certain victim, and that was going to be a real hurdle at trial.
Yeah, in the state of Texas, it is unlawful to shoot at someone if you don't have justification, whether you hit them or not. And so some officers were charged with shooting at people, and some officers were charged with hitting people with these, making impact with these people with deadly weapons. Again, the entire range of conduct under state law is unlawful.
In your mind, to what extent, if any, is it a mitigating factor that the highest levels of the police department were on the scene that day, and that attorneys representing a number of the officers have said publicly that they were only doing what they were instructed to do by their superiors?
Well, let me say 2 things about that. As I mentioned, it is quite clear from our investigation that systemic change is really necessary throughout the Austin Police Department and certain city apparatus. And so the outcome that we are pursuing today will address those concerns and I think bring some clarity for our community as to the specific role of leadership within the city and within the Austin Police Department that may have contributed to this conduct. But the other thing that I think is important to note is that all of the evidence was considered by grand juries, evidence about what orders were given and what orders were not given. And the members of our community who were charged with reviewing those facts made the correct determination, I believe, that the individual officers were also criminally culpable for their conduct.
I'm curious about the timing of all of this. How did you arrive at this conclusion and this request to the Department of Justice the first week of December of 2024, 2023?
Yeah, as I mentioned, the District Attorney's Office has been working through this matter for almost 2 years. And so today's outcome is a culmination of all of that work. It is a culmination of the work of the grand jury. It is a culmination of the review of the prosecutors here in the District Attorney's Office. And clearly it is the culmination of ongoing conversations between the District Attorney's Office and the City of Austin related to the City of Austin's role in what took place during the 2020 protest.
There is a segment of our community that also will undoubtedly highlight just how polarizing these indictments were over the past 2 years, that it fueled tensions between prosecutors and police. What is your response to that?
I think the overwhelming majority of our community has been clear that they have an enormous amount of respect for the dangerous work that officers in the Austin Police Department perform every single day, and that they expect policing to be conducted in our community in a way that it does not result in unnecessary harm for members of our community. They have spoken to that point on multiple occasions through the avenues that we give members of our community. They've spoken to that desire through their participation in grand juries. They have spoken to that desire through their role in numerous elections over the course of the last 2 years. Quite frankly, with the exception of a small number of detractors, there is no evidence that there is widespread dissatisfaction with increased scrutiny over law enforcement conduct that results in unnecessary harm.
Given that, do you have any regrets about bringing these indictments, this number of indictments? Do you still believe that was the appropriate thing to do, especially at the time?
None whatsoever. This is how our criminal justice system works every single day for thousands of people who come into contact with our criminal justice system. The officers who had cases before the grand jury were treated no differently than any other person accused of a crime in this community. What is sacred in our criminal legal system is the role of regular people. And I believe that the members of our community who served on grand juries performed their work to the best of their ability and admirably, and I have no regrets whatsoever about honoring their role and their work in our criminal justice system as they perform it every day and in a wide range of cases.
With regard to the request for a Department of Justice investigation, what are the mechanics of that? Who is actually sending the letter, drafting the letter, and what specifically is the request?
Yeah, the letter will likely be transmitted to the Department of Justice, both by the City of Austin and by the District Attorney's Office. It will be directed towards the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice, and the request will be for a pattern and practice investigation into the Austin Police Department. A pattern and practice investigation is a tool specific to the Department of Justice that allows them to detect and act on patterns of misconduct that deprive people of their constitutional rights. I believe in this instance there is a clear pattern of misconduct that deprived people of their liberty, and in many instances permanently of their good health. So the request will be forwarded to that department, and we look forward to working with them. I expect and look forward to the full cooperation of the City of Austin, the Austin Police Department with that investigation, and they will certainly have the full cooperation of the District Attorney's Office.
What happens if, should the Department of Justice say this is a local issue, there have been indictments in place, clearly there is some effort of accountability on the ground in Austin, thanks for the invitation, but no thanks?
Well, it is clear that it is the Department of Justice will have the ability to make a decision as to what they think is the right outcome. The reality is that the Department of Justice is in the best position to be able to do a full and thorough investigation. But it is true that there is no guarantee that they will initiate one. I have confidence that they will. We have been in communication with the department and will continue to be, and I look forward to their review of these matters.
They did a similar patterns and practice investigation of the Austin Police Department that lasted several years. They closed it in 2011 after a series of recommendations, but ultimately determined that there were no patterns and practices that violated the Constitution or people's rights. What happens if that's the landing spot in this particular instance? Do you think you will wonder then at that point about whether dropping most of these cases was the right thing?
No, not at all. As I said, we will be moving forward with the prosecution of 4 of these cases, of cases that had significant aggravating factors, and our community will have the opportunity to weigh in on that. But the reality is that the Department of Justice is the entity that is best positioned to secure systemic, lasting change within the department. That is not a function that this district attorney's office, or really any district attorney's office in the state, is capable of performing, and it's what's necessary in our community and in this instance. So it is the right thing to do, regardless of the outcome.
I think that is actually, one additional question. When you say aggravating circumstances, can you just describe what those are in those four cases?
Well, there are a number of them, and they vary by case. But for example, there are some officers who have multiple cases pending, who were engaged in multiple incidents throughout the protest, or whose conduct was so egregious that it was noted by their fellow officers. So those are the kinds of factors that exist in those cases.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
You bet.